Alright, let's talk about the skeletal system. Brought to you by Curious Marineland. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about part 1A through D. I made another video on E and F, the gross anatomy and the microanatomy of a long bone, a compact bone, and a cancellous bone, which I'm going to introduce some concepts about this. So first, let's talk about the nitty-gritty. When you think about the skeletal system, there's really two divisions. There's the axial skeleton and the appendicular. All right, but the skeletal system includes your bones, joints, cartilage, its ligaments. And technically, bone is a connective tissue. And one of the things you're going to see here, so here's the axial skeleton, here's the appendicular. So let's talk with the gross and get micro as we go through this. So here's your standard. What I'm going to do is show you some traced-in labeling here. The colleague of mine drew, and it's pretty cool. So let's see. Skip that. And there's basically a lot of functions, and here's Mr. Contemplative Skeleton. Here we go. Basic functions. This is going to repeat a couple times in this PowerPoint. So I want to jump down to, let's label the appendicular and the axial first, list the functions, and then talk about the types of bone. So notice what's traced in purple here and purple here. So you'll notice a straight line on the torso. That's the axial skeleton. Things coming off the torso are called appendages. So that's why it's called the appendicular skeleton. So if you're one of my students, you've already copied this down, or you need to copy this down if you've been absent. So the axial skeleton, here's the list of the bones, and here's the appendicular, divided into what's called the pectoral, that's the pectoral, and the pelvic girdle. So this is your limbs, your humerus, your femur, things like that. And here's the function. So this is the next part that I'm going to go through quickly, but if you want to pause it, I would do that. So it's just a couple slides that elaborate on the functions. So here's this. Pause if you need to. Storage is key. You don't think about storage, but one of the things we do is we store our calcium. And that's going to come into play later when we talk about the types of cells. Okay, providing structure. I mean, we understand that support and attachment to soft tissue organs. Those are obvious ones. But blood cell production. A lot of people don't think about it. Why do people need bone marrow transplants? Because the bones, your long bones, are a huge repository of red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. These are three types of red blood cells. Three types of cells: red, white, and platelet. Turns out there's a whole variety of these, but let's save that for circulatory system. All right, protection. Think about it. Your skull is encasing your brain. Your ribs are protecting your lungs and your heart. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section. Movement. So again, if you want to review these, go back and rewind the video. If you're one of my students, the PowerPoint will be on Blackboard. All right, 4 general types of bones: long bones, short bones, flat bones, and irregular. And again, pause the video if you need to. And again, this is going to, hopefully, we're going to wrap up really quickly. I want to elaborate on these and talk about, so these are the shapes. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 2 main types of bone that you see in all 4 of these in varying combinations. All right? All right, I'm back. Now, this is obviously not all the bones. I would need to get a vertebrae, and I would need to get a skull to show flat bones versus this is a long bone. These right here are your short bones. And the other 2, I didn't grab those, and I want to just show you pictures of those. Now, this is a little schematic. Imagine this being an irregularly shaped bone. This is a flat, short, long, but they both have these 2 combinations. So instead of going in great detail about the 4 types of bones, the composition of all those bones is either densely packed and smooth or spongy. We call it cancellous. It's less dense and it's airspace. And here's the thing about this. The ground substance, or the matrix, the space in between cells, that's a unique characteristic about all connective tissue, is that there's the cell and then the secretions that the cells make to produce fibers or something that fills in that space in between cells. Well, it's a hard substance. It's a hard substance, and it's actually calcium phosphate, and that's the main component of bone. Now, one of the things you saw earlier about storage, your bones store calcium, and what happens is they either release calcium into the bloodstream or they take calcium out of the bloodstream and store it. That's going to be something we'll talk about when we'll link endocrine system, and we'll link different in the nervous system to what's going on with there. But take a quick look. The matrix, that extracellular proteins or ground substance, all right, they're supporting connective tissue. There's cells called osteocytes. That's a bone cell. And there's some variations. Then what those osteocytes do is they produce and secrete calcium phosphate. This is a mineralized matrix. That's what bone is, a mineralized matrix. So here's just some other terms: compact versus spongy, or cancellous. So I want to finish with talking about those. This right here is the outer covering of a bone, and this is the inner lining that lines the marrow. And we're going to see that in greater detail when we talk about gross anatomy of a long bone. Okay, so before we go into elaborating on spongy and cancellous, we should recognize that there's 3 distinct cells. And it turns out this cell and this cell pretty much do the same thing. This is a new cell, this is an older cell, and both of them are going to deposit calcium phosphate. This one right here is going to break it down. So these all work in the system. This lays down bone tissue. This takes away and helps remodel. Well, if you've heard the term bone remodeling, these are working in a kind of like a synergistic, not a synergistic, a antagonistic way, but not antagonism like a bad thing. It's a balance, like we always see in anatomy and physiology. Homeostatic balance is a key thing. Okay, so there's your spongy cell. Cancellous cell is another way of saying it. It's spongy because it's got all these caverns, and then what's happening is these caverns are filled with red marrow. The yellow marrow is you're going to see later. The red marrow basically is the site of hematopoiesis. That's production of blood cells. Okay, and so matrix, and then these the bone tissue, these are called trabeculae. All right. So here's just we'll zoom in. Here's the cancellous bone all the way across here, and then this densely packed is the compact bone. So spongy / cancellous versus compact bone. Here's another. You'll see this is actual a picture here. All this spongy, and see this is the compact bone. It's densely packed. Okay, so pretty much that was just a short little video going over the functions of the skeleton, the basic types of 2 basic types, and the shapes. And I spent more time talking about all this. These 2 right here are in another video I made on the micro anatomy and the gross anatomy of a bone, compact and spongy. So, all right, thanks for watching. Brought to you by Curious Marine Land.